If you've seen the Taskmaster TV show, you'll know that at the end of each episode, Greg, and that's the Taskmaster, gives us a little recap of what we've learned in today's episode. And it reminds me a bit of the end of the old He-Man cartoons. Now, you have to be a certain age to have watched it, but they did the same thing. There'd be 20 minutes of action, Skeletor trying to destroy He-Man, but He-Man overcoming him by the power of Grayskull. I used to love that cartoon. But the bit at the end seemed a little bit pointless. Like they're trying to justify the action and cartoon violence to Mary Whitehouse. Take a look.
I love running at this time of the day.
Yeah, me too. Makes me feel close to nature.
The best part is that it's wonderful exercise.
It's the best. Of course, one should check with a doctor before doing any heavy exercise.
Right, and then start off just a little each day.
I sure wish we could tell that to everybody.
I think we just did.
We did?
Say for yourself.
Remember, be good to your body, and it'll be good to you.
Well said, He-Man. Now, I'll race you to the tree.
Okay.
See what I mean? It's painful. But, as we're in this Taskmaster mode, let me ask that question. What have we learned today? Well, we've learned not to allow Dave to be in charge of the Christmas decorations, and Armadillo is perfect for a nativity scene, and you can't wrap anything with just 3 bits of sticky tape. Good night, everyone. Oh, you're still here. Was that not enough? Do you want something more like the He-Man morality than the Taskmaster? Well, okay. You've probably never thought this, but many people view life as if it were an episode of Taskmaster. You've got to get through these challenges that life throws at you with the best score. And many of us view God like the Taskmaster. He sits on his throne, throwing tests and challenges our way and judging us, often harshly, on how well we're doing. We see God as this guy with a beard sitting on his throne, looking down at us and judging us. He's distant and he's removed. He doesn't help, and if anything, he just makes life more difficult. If I had £1 for every time I heard someone ask why God was doing this to them, well, I'd have at least £10. Now, I understand why we can sometimes view God like this. Life can be difficult. It can be challenging. And God can often seem distant. I understand why people who face real struggles and challenges can view God like a taskmaster. I've lost 2 friends this year to cancer. Both were younger than me. Both had families and young kids. And both suffered and struggled through their illness as their families watched on helplessly. I understand why people who go through things like that can think that God is distant and heartless. But in both situations, I've been moved by the faith and compassion of the families who've been left behind. The faith of 2 women who've both lost their husbands, who proclaim how good God is, even in the midst of unfathomable loss. Faith that testifies to the truth that God meets them in their suffering, that he comforts them in their pain. And you know what? That's my experience also, that in the dark and painful moments of life, God is there. He isn't absent. He isn't looking down, judging me and leaving me to struggle on. He isn't throwing challenges at me to see how I deal with them. My experience is that God meets me in the midst of the challenges of life. He rolls up his sleeves and he gets stuck in. He gives me strength and hope that he helps me. God isn't distant. He isn't sitting on his lofty throne looking down at us with judgmental eyes. He isn't plotting ways to make our lives more difficult or coming up with a new challenge to test us. God is near. He is with us. Now listen to these words from the Bible. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. Now this is taken from the prophet Isaiah. He's talking about Jesus and he goes on to describe a bunch of stuff about him. And the amazing thing is that this was written 600 years before Jesus was born. Emmanuel means God with us. And through Jesus, God became one of us. Jesus is God in a bod. He experienced what it is to be human. He faced many of the issues that we face. Well, perhaps not slow internet speeds and adverts in the middle of Bake Off. God went to extraordinary lengths to be with us. The Creator became created. The one in whom the entire universe is dependent chose to become dependent on his teenage mum. Why? Well, so that he can be with us and so that we can be with him, so that we can experience the fullness of life that he created us for, so that one day we can experience life free from pain and suffering, life free from sickness and death, so that we can experience life everlasting. And this is actually what Christmas is all about. The beginning of Jesus' life marks the beginning of our chance to experience what life, full life, is all about. God isn't a taskmaster. He isn't judging you to see if you're good enough. He isn't throwing challenges at you to make your life more difficult. He's a friend. He understands what it's like to be human. He understands what you're going through. He's there to offer you comfort and strength, to bring you peace and hope and joy. That's what we've learned today. And I personally think it's something worth exploring. And you know what? You can do that in the length of time it takes to watch an episode of Taskmaster. Stay tuned to find out more.